Hey everyone, how's everyone's day going? Enjoying the NAB show? All right, there's some energy here. My name is Brett Deshevsky. I am the founder of an organization here in New York called Creator Economy NYC. I appreciate the shout out. We got some folks here who have been to some of our events, so I appreciate the support and coming out to NAB. We are a community and network that's connecting content creators, marketers, brands, and digital media leaders that are all building in the creator economy here in New York. We also have a weekly newsletter that you can check out. It's Creator Economy NYC, where we're sharing stories that are shaping what's being built here in the creator economy. I also am head of content creators at Kickstarter, so a lot of content creator-led stuff. And today I'm very excited about what we're going to be discussing with an all-star panel lineup of New York City-based creators, diving into navigating the path of the modern solopreneur. Just by a show of hands, has anyone here familiar with the word solopreneur? Okay. First time for a lot of folks. And raise your hand if you're familiar with the term creator economy. You've heard it recently, at least in the last 5 months. All right. Okay, good. So we got a decent crew here. Well, I am stoked to introduce our panelists who are bring very unique and diverse perspectives on where they're at as solopreneurs and as content creators here in New York specifically. So I'm pleased to introduce Taylor Bell. Taylor, welcome. Taylor will introduce herself, and then I guess you could sit right here. We'll follow along. Next up, we have Colin Rocker. Colin, welcome. And last but certainly not least, Jacqueline Dallas, YouTube creator. So they'll introduce themselves, but we have 3 different platforms here where they're focused, which is quite unique with YouTube, Instagram, and YouTube again. So definitely a lot of diverse perspectives to share. But Taylor, if you want to go ahead and just briefly introduce yourself, what you do, where your content lies, and then we'll pass it all the way down. And then we're going to show some highlight reels of them to get a feel for their content and what they discuss.
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. My name is Taylor. Thank you guys for coming. I am a long-form YouTube creator, primarily making videos on business and lifestyle. So kind of anything from personal finance to what it's like being a solopreneur, which we'll cover. And then like fun New York City vlogs, bopping around the city, showing what life is like here at a high level. We'll get into it more, but that's what I do.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Colin.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out to watch and listen to and hopefully participate in this amazing panel. As Brett said, I'm Colin Rocker. My niche is career advice, specifically for people who I determine are first-gen professionals. So if you're the first person in your family to really navigate the corporate environment, I sort of tell authentic stories from my own experience in corporate America. And I'm primarily on Instagram, LinkedIn, and TikTok.
Love that. Huge fan of both of you. My name is Jacqueline. I make videos on technology in the real world. So basically technology's greater impact on our day-to-day life. That could be anything from the new iPhone to the tech that NFL players use in their helmets to prevent against concussions. And then I also interview the CEOs that make the tech products.
Amazing. Well, welcome all 3 of you. And we have a quick highlight reel that we're going to put up on the screens here. I don't know if there's much sound, but
You can narrate.
they're in the order of who we have up here.
I filmed the voiceover for this 2 nights ago, so I could
Remember it well.
Do it live.
something about business and lifestyle, showing things that I'm passionate about. Oh yes, I was a former consultant, so that kind of plays into my expertise, if you will. New York City, thank you. Cinematography, New York City, gives me a good backdrop. That's about it.
Nice.
Let's go.
Very cool.
That's Taylor. And then we got Colin's.
Yeah, we'll see. Bear with me, folks. Yeah, I don't know.
Some technical difficulties.
We need some people from the other tech booths to come over and give us these.
Anyone here? No tech. But yeah, I think it's important to know you guys were both consultants.
Both former consultants pushed into content creation. We're much happier doing this.
Yeah. Are there any current consultants here?
Ooh.
Oh wow, okay.
One okay?
Are there any recovering consultants here? All right. I'm sure around there is.
Honestly, we can probably just skip.
Yeah, if it won't play, we're fine to just
We're good. Just
move on. Yeah.
Real
We're rolling.
time. Yeah.
We're rolling.
So obviously Taylor's the most important. That's why we showed hers. I'm only joking, but let's dive into the first question. I want to hear from each of you, in very simply one sentence, how you would answer today. What is a solopreneur? Want to kick us off, Taylor?
Sure. I would say a solopreneur is someone who has started a company or business, and they work by themselves. They don't have a team or a co-founder necessarily. And I guess we were kind of talking about this in the green room. Oh, I'm going past my one sentence, aren't I?
Okay. Lots of commas.
I think, yeah, one long run-on sentence. But typically I also feel like, at least within the content creation space, the business kind of revolves around the talent, personality, interests, what have you, of that person.
That's great. Colin, what about you?
I think for me, a solopreneur is someone who takes ultimate responsibility and accountability for the top line growth and direction of the business. But I do think, especially as a solopreneur and a solo creator, I mean, we all are in some ways fractional business owners and fractional CEOs. I'm sure we brought on financial help, creative production help at times, navigating brand deals with like a talent or management team. And so we may have, in the moment access to resources as we need them. But at the end of the day, it's up to all of us as, solo entrepreneurs, as solopreneurs to grow that business and to really set the direction of where we're headed.
Love it. Jacqueline?
Yeah. I think that a solopreneur, as you were saying, is, an individual person. That's historically how it's been defined. But I actually think that the opportunity in the creator economy is to build a creator-led media company where the content is the top of funnel, but there's so many other offerings and services, because in order to have a sustainable business, in my opinion, it can't rely on just one person. And I think there's a lot of fun in building a team too. So we'll obviously get into that.
Oh, I love that. So I want to stick with you on that point. I'm curious, for you as a solopreneur and as the creator, what are the key platforms that are enabling you to do what you're doing? And if there's any aspiring solopreneurs here in the audience, what should they be looking at?
Yeah, love that. So, I started YouTube. That's the primary platform. When I was 13 years old, I was helping my grandma with a lot of her technology. So I was like showing how to download a Kindle book or, reset her email password. And then I started posting similar stuff to YouTube, fell in love with it. One thing led to another, and now it's the full-time thing. So YouTube is the main platform. And I think that most people, love YouTube because there's a direct incentives that are very much aligned between YouTube, the platform, and the creators, where the business model is AdSense on the platform. So they run ads before your videos, and then they give creators a percentage of that cut, the majority, and then they take some. But I also think that Instagram and Twitter are great platforms too. So I try to have every platform work together for different reasons.
Love that. And Colin, so I know Instagram's your primary platform. Is there anything else that you're using external from Instagram currently to enable your solopreneurship? Maybe platforms that are helping you monetize or keep, things organized and steady stream?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think from an organizational standpoint, I am a diehard like Apple Notes user. Like I'm very low tech in my stack in terms of how I keep myself organized. And so a lot of my scripts or videos are held there. But I've also got, some accounting software to handle, brand deals and such. I'm in my email a lot, sort of negotiating, talking to different people I want to partner with. I approach my job like I approached all of my past jobs. So I'm constantly trying to, network and create relationships with people. And so I'm also on LinkedIn a lot, landing in people's DMs and sort of seeing what I can, get into. Yeah.
Colin's a good follow on LinkedIn. So. And Taylor, what about you? Take us home in terms of the platforms that you're utilizing currently.
I'm biased. I'm very, very focused on YouTube, almost to a fault, where it would probably behoove me to diversify a little bit. But as Jacqueline said, I do think it is a pretty beautiful business model where they do give, I think the revenue share is the best on YouTube from what I know. You keep a majority of it. And it also is just, I can't help but think that long form content, again, I'm biased, but I think that that's really, really a great place to build a very, very deep connection with your audience. And yeah, long form is just, it's my bread and butter. So YouTube is where it's at for me.
I love that. Are you guys using anything like, I know there's a lot of these link in bio tools that people are, using to sell other products more deeply. Are you using anything like that currently?
Affiliate marketing a little bit. Amazon Associates, like to know it a little bit, but
I have a Comey page, which is basically like a Linktree competitor,
Closer.
I have a Comey page, which is like a Linktree competitor, basically. But yeah, I think the best answer is whatever works for you. And it really does depend on the type of business you're trying to build. I am not a recipient of the wonderful monetization models of YouTube quite yet. And so a lot of what I'm doing is definitely brand partnerships. And so I just have to make sure I'm incredibly reachable, to a fault at times. And so I'm, constantly putting out my emails and my channels and how to get in touch with me, because that's how I monetize myself as a creator, through brands knowing that I exist, right? And so that's why I'm on LinkedIn. That's why I'm in my emails. But yeah, I think those are pretty much a little bit of Notion, I would say. Yeah.
Okay, Notion's great. Anything else that we may have missed in that tech stack?
I use Slack a little bit.
Slack?
Discord's great. I don't really do affiliate marketing as part of the business model. So for us, it's like these longer term deals with legacy tech companies, and mostly brand partnerships.
Whether
and then
it's taking you on a walk through New York City and showing you what daily life is like here,
Now,
and
we're
how
at
much
the
it
NAB
costs,
show.
or going
How
over
many
the
people
ins
have
and
been
outs of
to the
how
NAB
content
show
creators
before here?
actually make a living,
All right, a
using
lot of
the kitchen
returners,
slash and
first
emphasizing
timers.
the important points, of course. I
My
cover
first
all
time.
things business
So when I
and
was
smart
doing some research
lifestyle, as I
on the
like to call
NAB
it,
show,
with the goal to
primarily,
motivate and
or
uplift my
initially it was
viewers in
focused
some
its
way.
section
Through
on
leveraging
radio
my
and
former
TV.
background as a management
And of
consultant
course, we're
and
here
business school
because
graduate,
these
combined with
wonderful
some
creatives
knack for
and
storytelling
solopreneurs
through my
have
editing
leveraged
and
the new
the
platforms
unbeatable
like
backdrop that New York City
YouTube and
provides.
Instagram
My
and whatnot,
aim
which are not
really is
radio
to
and
create
TV.
videos that are simply fun to watch,
They've built
no matter what the
audiences
topic
because
is.
we've been seeing this shift of individuals over institutions. And I'm curious from each of you why you think audiences are tuning into folks like yourselves as opposed to going to one of the more traditional mediums like an NBC or a TechCrunch or something like that. So I'm curious, Taylor, on your front.
Oh, I could say a lot about this, but I'll keep it, or I'll start with this quick anecdote that I've told you guys that I love to tell. I don't even remember who gave this speech, but I remember it was some A-list celebrity that I should remember. But they're really good friends with a close YouTuber. And the two of them were out in LA one day, and the amount of people apparently that came up to the YouTuber versus the celebrity for a photo to talk to them was just like outsized by some crazy degree. And so I think that what the picture that gets painted there is the connection that an audience member can have with with the creator, because you know the real person, to the extent you're sharing a part of your life, you actually form a real relationship with the creator versus maybe a more traditional celebrity or more traditional, I guess, kind of media format. Like we don't know what Leonardo DiCaprio's like. We know he's a great actor. We watch his movies, but we don't know what he's like versus
The tabloids.
which are all true, of course. But I mean, I don't know if any of you guys watch me. I know a few here do, but like they know my parents' names, they know my dog, they know my interests and everything. And so it's just a deeper relationship. And I think that's kind of why the individual creator is able to thrive.
Love that. Owen, thoughts?
Yeah, I think I definitely have some thoughts. I think at the end of the day, social media is still media. And so I do think that there are a lot of principles and mindsets that a lot of you have coming from the worlds in which you live in and the context of your work that can translate over into social media in terms of foundational storytelling principles, basics of production. We all have to get our lighting and audio right? That doesn't change just because we're on YouTube or Instagram, right? And so I think, and I've seen, I don't have any at the top of my head, but I've seen a couple examples of people who have actually made the shift from a more traditional media career, especially journalists now. When you talk about platforms like Substack, when you talk about platforms like Twitter or Threads, right, where you can directly monetize yourself in a way and lean into the more creator aspects of yourself in terms of that authenticity you were speaking to, that I guess traditional media really doesn't have the time for because you're on a programmatic schedule, and it really isn't used to really working in that way. And so I think there can be some crossover, but I think that authenticity, but also bringing those foundational principles into the new mediums and into the new platforms has been what's really led to some success.
Now, Colin mentioned some traditional journalists. I most recently, Taylor Lorenz, who's a big tech and culture journalist, left the Washington Post to start her own Substack newsletter. So she's going independent. And we've seen on YouTube, Cleo Abram, she used to work at Vox. She went the leap into full time on YouTube. And now I think she just hit 4 million subscribers in maybe 2 years or something. So going back to our previous question was that there are platforms that enable this where previously, just 10 years ago, it wouldn't make sense for a journalist or someone to jump from more traditional means to then go into being independent. But now we have the YouTube and the link in bios and all the platforms that help you monetize and build a full-time career. So same with you, Jacqueline, curious.
Yeah, I think that it can feel really overwhelming if you're hearing this talk right now of all the different things you have to know or all the different platforms. But I think the coolest thing about posting online is that the numbers aren't the only thing that matter. It also matters who's watching. So if you get 10 views, but one of them is your next job opportunity or a sponsorship, that's still a win. And I think that the barrier to entry has never been lower. Like, you can create stuff online and find your community. Your content online kind of becomes a magnet for who you want to attract. So if you're super optimistic and positive, you'll attract people that are also super optimistic and positive. And then on the journalist point, if you're a journalist or you have a traditional media background, I actually think that you're positioned to really win because you'll have the storytelling frameworks and the process of that. And then YouTube is like jet fuel for that type of content.
So that's a great segue into what's next, where, you know, there might be folks here who are creating content or work with people who are creating content or trying to figure that out. And there's this big kind of focus on niching down, and that in like a crowded landscape, I think each of you have stood out because you have a niche of some sort. So I'm curious your thoughts and advice for creators or aspiring creators who are listening. How should they consider niching down? I'm back to you, Taylor.
It's a good question. This might be a little bit of a hot take. I'm curious your all's thoughts too. I actually don't think you have to niche down right away by any means, nor do I think you have to stay in that niche forever, because I think I'm actually a case where I changed my niche a little bit. And I did so in a very intentional way. I mean, I kind of ran an experiment. I'll just tell you what it was. Like, my channel kind of was founded off of me talking about my previous Ivy League background and like consulting and why I went into it, what it is. And then there came a point where I was never in love with consulting, but I certainly fell out of love with it. And the last thing I wanted was to be pigeonholed into talking just about consulting in order for my channel to thrive. Because what's the point of this then? And so before leaving consulting, I basically kind of stopped talking about it for 2 years. It still existed in the background of my life because it was my full-time job. So of course it came up, but I stopped making videos about it altogether to see if I could still have a thriving YouTube channel focused on more New York City lifestyle and personal finance topics and, you know, things like that. And, all to say that I actually switched my niche. And I think as long as you're intentional about it, and you're very, very focused and deliver value in whatever it is you're talking about, I think that you can cover a wide range of topics. And so that's my take on niching down, but I know others might disagree with that.
Okay. I think you definitely have to have a brand to succeed because there has to be a level of consistency in terms of what your audience expects to hear from you. But I do agree with you that your niche can change, especially in the world where, you know, I think
you got to start somewhere.
100%. And I think Taylor and I are both examples of we grew our audiences initially talking about what we did for work full time. And now neither of us do that thing for work full time. And so how do you sort of keep that audience entertained and engaged with the content you're making? And I think that's realizing what about your story or what about your life or what kind of thing can you bring to the table that's unique, right? Even when either of us were talking about our careers, I don't think either of us are the best consultants to ever exist, right?
No.
So people were showing up on our channels and in our platforms because we were sharing something that they could relate to and find some value in. And so I think as long as you bring that consistency, you can go from cooking to fitness. You can go from, you know, tech to clothing and fashion. I think we've seen that. And I think from a longevity standpoint, it's very tough and it's very rare for someone to be talking about the same thing for 10, 20 or 30 years.
Brett, I'm going to pass this actually back to you. I feel like you meet so many creators at all of your events. I'm curious what you've seen and if that's the case.
All right. This doesn't usually happen. So now I'm caught off guard. I mean, my personal take on this is that you're going to have to experiment to find a niche and start somewhere. So for me, my main platform is LinkedIn. That's where I create a lot of my content. And I originally started like creating typical thought leadership content, exploring and whatnot. And then I realized, okay, I'm leaning into this industry. Maybe I'll start sharing like tips and tactics for creators. And then I started leaning into like actually industry perspectives. And that's kind of like where I ended up. And then niched even further down to like talking about the New York City creator economy. So I think just in general, it's also like how a lot of businesses evolve from, it starts with initial idea and then you kind of figure out where that content market fit is that people talk about nowadays. So that's kind of what I recognize as a lot of creators, and it also varies platform to platform, and also how the algorithm is picking something up. So you see something's working, it's like stick with it, and then it's like adjust gradually and continue to iterate. which I think is an interesting perspective.
There's also an idea on YouTube that a lot of creators follow, which is outlier theory, where you'll see topics or ideas that have done well on other channels in your niche previously. So let's say that a channel on average gets like 100,000 views per video, and then you see they have a video that gets like 5 million views. That's a pretty good indication that that topic resonated with a wide audience. And then you'll see YouTubers go in and remix that format for their own channel. So I would say that, like, if it's a great idea, it'll probably do well regardless of what the previous audience was on your channel. But having like a thread line, especially from a business perspective, helps. Like, if a brand's reaching out to you and they don't know what type of content you make or who you reach, it will be a lot harder for them to want to spend. I think you guys are really good examples of like lifestyle first, but then there's another element that you're providing. And I feel like that, like, the unique pairings is also what helps differentiate a brand, where it's like you're really good at one thing, but then you have a polar opposite that complements it.
Love that. So now each of you all create full time, and I'm curious two things. One, why did you decide to like lean into this? And ultimately, what was the tipping point that led you to being like, I'm going to be a solopreneur? Because it's not something that you're just like one day wake up, you're like, all right, we're dipping, you know, whatever it is. There's a tipping point. It's like, okay, here's the green light, right?
So to answer the first part of your question, why I decided to get into it, I feel like the case with so many, like almost all YouTubers I know, it kind of happens on accident where you're making videos to help your grandma. I made silly videos for my dad's birthday. I started a YouTube channel for fun during quarantine about this like side hustle. I started reselling my clothes, and then I'm like, oh wait, this is kind of fun, editing videos and getting better at it. Maybe I could talk about some other stuff that I have like a competitive advantage in, and talked about my education, whatever, all this stuff. And so the reason I went into it was hardly premeditated. It was just something I started and kind of found a knack for maybe, and just really, really came to love. And so I wish I had a more satisfying answer on that. But the tipping point I can speak to a bit as well. I did both management consulting and YouTube for 3 full years. And, it was tough. People ask me how I did that, because management consulting is notoriously, you know, it's not a 9 to 5, it's a 9 to 9 on a good day. And every now and then you get a little bit of a break, but it's a lot of work. And I did both, and I don't know, people ask me how, and I'm just like, I don't know, I just did it. Because the answer is like, I wanted to do it because I just fell in love with it. And so I think that it was, I think Colin and Samir, who you guys definitely both know, like, I think Samir told me one day, you know you're a creator when you wake up, you can't not do it. And I that's how I feel. And so and the tipping point came when, I wish it was more of a positive reason, but I was just on this burner case. They call it a burner, like really, really crazy case in consulting, working till like 1, 2 a.m. every night, which, by the way, if I do that now for myself, I don't mind because it's for my business, but, I still try not to do that too often. Alas, I was doing that for weeks on end, and I was like, I was at a point with YouTube where it was also doing well enough and sustaining me. I was like, I don't need to do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. It's not benefiting anyone. I'm probably not being a good employee for them because my heart's not in it. I don't want to be here. And I want to do this other thing. And so I had this like cognitive dissonance for a long time. Like, I'm at a job that doesn't align with my passions and values, but I have this other job that does, and it's doing really well, and like I'm very privileged in that way. So the tipping point came from a very, very hard project in consulting where I was like, I'm out.
Love that. That's great. Olin, I don't know if that happened to you as well with a hard project, but.
Well, something hard did happen. I had a baby and then I lost my job. So that was a pretty big tipping point for me. And, I was kind of just having a series of very tough conversations with my wife around like what I was going to do next. And I'd had a very sustainable network, and I felt like if I wanted to go in and pursue something else or try to get another job at another agency, I could do that. But kind of same to you, I sort of had this nagging thought in the back of my head, like, what if I just put all of my energy and effort and took those 60, 70, 80 hours per week and put it into something that I was already just beginning to see some real financial success in? And so, what I tell people is that I approach my career as a creator the same way I approach my regular career, right? I'm still waking up at 5:30. I'm still working until 9 or 10 each night. And it's like, I'm putting the time and the effort into building this and building myself. And I've seen that play out even just in the last couple months. And so definitely, a very real tipping point. If I want to stay, in my apartment and off the street, I'm going to have to make something happen. But I really have been able to do that, and it feels really good to be doing something I love as well.
I love that. Jack, and what about you?
Yeah, I love the point on structure, because I think that discipline and working hard is kind of like the only way to get the skills that you need in any industry. I feel like everything in life is pretty learnable. And if you just put in the reps, you'll get good at it. And if you go to any of our first videos, I think it'll be pretty evident. Our videos are,
Please don't do that.
our videos are, or I can speak for myself. My videos are so much better now than they were back then. I had no idea what I was doing. And I also was in college, so similar to consulting. I was working like 60 to 100 hours a week for YouTube while being in school full time. And then I just graduated like 2 months ago. So this is
Congratulations.
thank you. Yeah. This is like the first time that I'm actually like fully just doing this, but, I was basically doing it full time, during school. And I think for YouTube specifically, like there's so much information now online. COVID was a time when so many people got into creating content that there are now entire channels with millions of subscribers that just report on the creator economy. And I think that media is moving in a way where, creators have an opportunity to create like the next generation of media companies, which is super exciting.
I love that. And that is a great segue to my next question where it's, a lot of the way that creators are monetizing that you typically think of when it comes to the platforms is like, oh, they're making money through brand partnerships, which I would say is a really, accessible first way to start to make money, unless the platform's paying you, which typically isn't something to rely on. But how are we seeing today solopreneurs actually build like sustainable, lasting businesses that scale beyond purely brand partnerships and affiliate type of stuff? So, Jacqueline, you touched on the fact like building a media company. How are you thinking about that? And like, what is the next phases for your brand, Nothing But Tech?
Yeah. So I work with this company called Smooth Media, who I love. If anyone in the room knows Morning Brew, let's go. One of my really close friends, or actually a couple of my really close friends were like employee number 4, 5, and 6 at Morning Brew, and they were the head of growth and strategy. And I think they're brilliant, Josh. And they basically grew Morning Brew, until it got acquired, and then they left and they started this company called Smooth Media, whose mission is to partner with creators and make like a creator-led media company where they're doing like a lot of the operational management, and they think about things like what would it look like, especially for tech, like if we did in-person events or a job board. So much of the audience that watches the videos, work in tech or they want to work in tech. And then a lot of these bigger companies, need help getting tech talent. So there's probably a really cool opportunity eventually to create a job board and work on that. Right now, our main business model is working with brands that are legacy companies that make really interesting but complex technology, and then breaking down to the audience what they actually do. So like AMD would be an example, or like ARM, like companies where, they're changing the world every day with their tech, but since people don't understand what they're doing, they may not have like a lot of brand equity with the
I have no idea what both of those companies do, so I'll tune in to your content.
Send me the episode.
I love that. Colin, how are you thinking about yourself, in the next phases as a solopreneur?
Yeah, I think it's an existential crisis every creator, I think, has late at night, because you're right. I mean, you could be demonetized, you could be deplatformed. The platform you've built your career on could be, banned by Congress. So yeah, I think, certainly I'm in the bucket of it's a lot of brand deals, but I'm starting to do a lot more speaking. And I honestly want to get into a place where I feel like I can monetize my mission, not necessarily monetize my audience. And so a lot of what I talk about is how to, really create a better life and better career for yourself and sort of alter really the trajectory of your family. And so I'm starting to talk to organizations that do that and sort of get into a place where I'm consulting for them. I love what you're talking about in terms of the job board. That seems really, really cool. But I guess if I could be in some ways, using my scaled media reach and audience as a creator to create opportunities for other people who were in similar situations that I was when I was younger. I think that's what I would like to do. But definitely that is a high level strategic plan. But tomorrow I'll be posting a brand deal.
We're looking forward to that. Taylor?
Kind of similarly, brand deals is last time I calculated, I think 59% of my revenue right now. So a huge chunk, and definitely feeling the desire to diversify, even though things are going well. As Colin said, that can go away tomorrow for, however many reasons. And so the things, at least in the medium term, that I'm really thinking about, I think that courses are a really, really great business model. I know that they have a little bit of a negative rep. I recently found out on one of my videos. I knew that in the US market, there have been a few like bad apples. So it's been interesting to navigate. But I still think it's a good business model. I think courses are great, and they can serve as a financial engine for a lot of creators to then kind of do what they do best, which is create, and to not have to rely on brand deals. So I think that that's something that's really exciting to me in the medium term. Besides that, my long-term goal, I'm still figuring it out, but I've always said, I want to start my own business, my own product or service. I don't know what yet, but hopefully, YouTube can grow to the point where that might serve as a really, really nice jumping off point for that. But TBD.
Love that. TBD. It's all you need. You got to keep building. So, I mean, I thought those are all great answers. And, we've seen just from my experience and, even working at Kickstarter, I mean, in my role, it's working with content creators who are trying to get to that next thing. And it's like, what can they do? Well, they have this audience and this distribution so they can create, products and experiences that they can fund and, build out their own IP, whether it's, maybe it's courses and they're productizing their knowledge, or they launch physical products. I'm sure a lot of people here have heard of Mr. Beast before. That sound about right? He kind of has reached like celebrity status. But he launched like a physical product, Feastable. So he's creating his own IP. And of course, like instead of him marketing Hershey's or something, he's like, well, I'm just going to market my own, chocolate brand. So, creators, as Jacqueline said, are turning into their own media companies. And, as we said in the previous question, individuals over institutions. So people want to hear from all three of you as opposed to like a faceless, nameless brand, which I think is certainly exciting. I do want to leave room for Q&A if folks do have questions, but I just have a kind of like a rapid round to kind of close things out. So the way that I want to play this is I will ask the one question and then we'll go around and then we're going to swing it back and then we'll go back around. All right. So the first question is, in one word, what's the most important skill for a solopreneur?
Ooh. Oh my God. Can we start with Jacqueline?
Okay, Jacqueline, go.
Work ethic.
Nice.
2 words. But
Often,
Sure, sorry.
we're going to put a dash in there.
Relentless, maybe.
Work
One
ethic.
word, yeah.
authenticity.
Whatever word encompasses like being able to stand back up even after you get kicked down.
Resilience.
Resilience.
There we go.
Works.
I love that. All right. We're gonna come back to you.
Okay, fair enough.
What's one tool you couldn't live without as a solopreneur?
Final Cut Pro.
Final Cut Pro. They have a booth here?
Do they?
Go check it out.
DoorDash.
DoorDash. Okay.
Notion.
Notion. Okay. How many people here are familiar with Notion? Okay. Wow. Good. Love to see that. All right. Final one. We're going to start with you, Jacqueline. So Taylor will take us home, but the biggest misconception about being a solopreneur is
That is impossible.
That you actually have to do everything yourself.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Like, we do have support systems. There are people we can go to. And, like, I see some of my, like, good creator friends in the front row. Like, I don't know. I complain to Shervin all the time when my editing software crashes and he helps me. You know what I mean? Like, we have friends and yeah, great guy.
I love that. Well, that's my questions. I did want to leave time if the audience had any questions for the folks up here. If you wanted to come up and ask. We have
a mic coming around.
And just keep the questions obviously concise and relevant to what was discussed. And state your name.
Yes. First off, my name is Henry, and I just want to thank everybody here for your amazing talk.
And just hold it closer to your mouth so we get
Super sensitive, weirdly.
So I have 2 questions. My first question is, it's just a question because I'm ignorant and I'm not entirely familiar with the term solopreneur. I wanted to ask, does solopreneur only mean only focuses on content creators, or does it broaden out?
I think it's used broadly for any business where it's like.
Probably restate the question.
Yes. So to restate the question, does solopreneur only relate to content creators or is it a general term? And I feel like it's a general term that can define a lot of different businesses.
I think that's a good question because the main focus on this was how solopreneurship has been very much associated with like internet businesses and whatnot, but there are so many solo founders out there. It could pertain to anything. I mean, you could be a solo coder that's doing work or consulting type work, or you're a solo app developer. In that case, I would define you as a solopreneur in that sense. Or if you're like a trainer, like a gym trainer, and that's what you do, like you're a solopreneur as well. It really just means like you are a individual entrepreneur, and what you're building is like you like are hands on with it. It revolves around you is kind of how I would define it.
Gotcha. So this kind of, I'm not entirely sure if this connects to my second question, but as a aspiring film student who is definitely interested in the content creation world, but doesn't want to necessarily become the content creator, how would you like, what advice would you give somebody who wants to help behind the scenes to like a content creator? For example, Mr. Sherwin over here, who is amazing, by the way.
Hey, Sherwin.
Right?
Hey.
Mm-hmm.
So the question was, how can you, you want to be in the creator world, but you don't necessarily want to be the content creator yourself. How can you go about being behind the scenes? So, and I'm curious if, do you, I assume you guys work with folks that are behind the scenes, right? What are some advice?
First full-time person this week.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
Wow. Moving fast. That's nice. Yeah.
I actually don't, but I have friends who do. Sorry, Trevor, I'm going to keep picking you out, but Shervin's roommate Tejas, he's so well connected. I feel like some of you must know him. He works with like a full-time producer who helps him film everything, helps him edit, helps him ideate. And so while Tejas is the person in front of the camera and coming up with a lot of the ideas, his producer Ken does a lot as well. And so I don't know, to the extent you would want to produce or attach yourself to a creator who is excited to be the one in front of the camera, I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I don't know the mechanics of how hiring goes, but
yeah, it could be like a creator versus like creative. Like you can be the video producer, you could be like the DP, you could be help with thumbnails. I feel like there's so much opportunity in the creator economy.
And I think the one quick thing I'll give you is, I think another thing that would be good for you to look into is what community can you create or join where you'd be surrounded by other creators and people who are adjacent to the creator economy, like Creator Economy NYC if you're New York City based. But there are other groups and other things and all types of different cities and areas, and even virtually, where you can start to interact with people who are just in this industry, but not necessarily in front of camera, like the three of us.
Good luck.
All right. We want to make sure we have some other questions. We have the mic man.
I think this guy
Yeah, the guy.
Then we have two over here on the side.
I want to talk gear. I mean, you mentioned Final Cut Pro. I mean, does it get to a point where you're going to go bankrupt? I mean, I want that microphone. I want this. I want, software, hardware. Where do you draw the line?
if I may on that one, I have 500,000 subscribers and I've never filmed anything not on my iPhone. So no, you don't have to go bankrupt. Yeah.
The investment that we've all made, I think, as creators is in the stories we're telling and how we're connecting with our audiences. And I think you can do that with, $1,000 phone that sits in your pocket versus, tens of thousands of dollars of, equipment. Though there are situations where that could be the way in which you stand out, because maybe you just have the best, crispiest looking video and the best audio. That's not me, but it depends on what you're going for.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that if the idea is good enough, it will transcend how it's filmed. But sometimes, I do a lot of tech interviews with CEOs, and then it's really nice if that's filmed well. So we'll shoot that on Blackmagic cameras or a higher quality. But then other videos are shot on iPhone.
Well, so the best investment I made from a content standpoint, and I create very much amateur content compared to all them, is a microphone. So I got the DJI microphone because when if you're scrolling on a feed or you're watching a video, if this panel goes up on YouTube and the audio is so you're in a big room, no one wants to watch that. So good audio, I feel is transcends anything. Cause if you can't watch it, well, at least you can hear it very well. And that's always a great experience.
Yeah. There are studies on that show consumers care a lot more about audio than video. So something can be in 420p, ghost caught on camera type stuff. But if the audio is crisp.
How y'all doing? My name is Jakari. I work in the film industry. I'm looking to start a YouTube channel, and I've been getting this word coming to me often. Branding. Went to film school. They don't talk about that. So my question to you guys is, how should I think about going about branding myself along with my channel, with my social media? Or how far out should I look to plan, branding and getting myself out there with the channel? Yeah.
So you're building your personal brand? Yeah. The question was around how to think about building your personal brand alongside the channel that you're building. Maybe is your personal brand separate from your channel, or do you integrate the two? You guys are all the faces of your channel, so.
I think it all starts with you probably consume a lot of content, and if you don't and you want to make content, I think that's a good first step. But what looks cool to you? What resonates to you when you look at how someone makes a YouTube video, or you see how someone packages up a thumbnail, or you look at the header on their page? It's controlling for cool shit you like, I think, is a really good strategy when you're starting out. I use Pinterest. I'm still on Tumblr. I'm constantly collecting and creating visual representations of what I want to create in my content so I can continually be inspired because I'm not a designer. I'm not a graphics person, right? And I don't have the budget to hire any. So I've got to do a lot of that myself. But I think you can start out with just like, that looks cool. Let me try to emulate that because you're still going to put your own flavor on it, whether you realize it or not.
I think taking action is the best catalyst for growth. So having an idea and doing all the research, super important, and you like kind of create a general framework, and then you try it, and you're like, ooh, I hated that, or ooh, I really like this, and you learn over the process. I also think a framework is like, how would someone describe you in one sentence to a new audience member? Like, if they can be like, oh, he makes XYZ types of videos, that's a pretty good indication that you have a brand that's consistent.
I really like that. Wow. Yeah, I think, to round that out, just like getting yourself out there. And again, we talk about individuals over institutions. People connect with people. They want to see your face and who you are, and have clear audio. So you get a good mic.
Hi, my name is Marie. Thank you so much. My question is, imagine you want to start what you are doing right now and you want to stand out from the other creators. And what would you do if you could start right now and, doing what you're doing in your industry, in your specific audience niche, and how would you stand out? And this is the question number one.
I think step one is like, no one is inherently good when they begin. So I wouldn't even necessarily worry just about standing out. I would focus more on like gaining the skills. So like, can you title and thumbnail video well? Can you edit? Like disproportionately, the first 30 seconds on YouTube are more important than the rest of the video, because if you can retain, like, let's say an extra 10% of people in the first 30 seconds, then you have more people throughout the entire video versus like the last 30 seconds, a little less important. And then once you've like kind of learned the skills, which just happens through repetition, I would then really focus on outlier theory, because outlier theory is the idea of like previously successful videos, if repackaged, will be successful again. And it's easier to just make the wheel better than reinvent the wheel, in my opinion.
I think that's really good advice. I like the outlier theory. My framing on that is I would sort of look for what contrasts you to other people and doing what you want to do. And so if you have a general idea of the niche or topic that you want to be talking about, so like for me, it was careers, like corporate careers, right? Like finance, consulting, and all these other things, right? Tech. The contrast to me was that, I moved to New York with a suitcase. I couldn't afford an apartment, so I lived in an attic for 2 months before I saved up enough money to move to Harlem, right? And so I think like telling that story and how I contrasted to everyone else in my environment, I'm not the best consultant, right? Duh, I got fired, right? So, but I think telling those stories is how I connected to my audience. And so with whatever you want to talk about, whether that's music production, whether that's cameras, whether that's whatever you're interested in, the weather, right? Looking in that area and saying, how do I stand out in this space, is really, really important. And I think that's something we all do really well.
Agreed. I would think about your, kind of what Colin said, like thinking about your competitive advantages, because everyone in this room does something better than another person here. Like that is just going to happen no matter what it is, no matter how small that thing is. And so really, really leaning into, I know some people call it your unfair advantages, like what makes you special? What about your background is different and unique that you feel comfortable leaning into? And ultimately, kind of going back to the branding question to combine those a little bit, I think that it's really powerful to be known as like the blank girl or the blank, like the apartment tour guy. Not everyone knows his name, but he's known for that. And so kind of goes more to the branding question, but I think that leaning into your competitive advantages can help you find out what that kind of thing is for you.
You do one more? Yeah.
Hi, my name is Mark.
Mark,
for being here. And I have a kind of a boring, practical question.
No.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
No, go for it.
It's so when you transition into a solopreneur and kind of content creator full time, like how did you deal with the kind of the losing your employee benefits? You're going from employee to employer. So your health insurance or matching funds. And I'm especially curious about Colin's, you have a family, your wife and a child when you got fired. So how was that? Was there a sticker shock, and did you have to get a tax guy or something?
Yeah, no, I mean, my family's actually here snacking on some free pretzels they gave me in the speaker lounge. No, I'm joking. I think, I mean, my trick was marrying someone that had a good corporate job. So I'm on my wife's insurance and, I use a lot of those benefits. But again, that is an unfair advantage that I had, right? The other thing is, when I lost my job, I'd already been creating for 2 years. And so I had a solid enough amount of runway, whereas it wasn't like I lost my job and then I'm going to be on the street tomorrow, right? I'd been, hustling on the internet for a while there. So I had something saved up. So that's the reality. And then when I got started, I got an accountant, I got a financial advisor. And so I know where my money is going. So yeah, just getting smart about it.
Pretty much the same. It sucks though. I pay for my own health insurance.
So do I.
Yeah, which is annoying. Like, you don't think about it, especially where I was before my consulting job had incredible health insurance. Anyway, small price to pay though for doing something that I actually love and am passionate about. But yeah, it's not fun.
All right. Well, thank you so much to our panelists, Jacqueline, Colin, and Taylor. You guys were unbelievable. And thank you to the NAV show for organizing this. Awesome questions and a great audience. So thank you so much. And where can everyone find you guys?
Okay, if you look up NBT Jacqueline or Nothing But Tech on YouTube.
I'm Career Colin, on all channels.
Taylor Bell, all channels. Well, yeah, YouTube, Instagram.
Love that. And I'm sure if you look up their names, they'll come up. Google will do its thing. So